A private investigator's case, love, lies, and justice. The office was a mess, as always. Papers and empty coffee cups cluttered the desk, and the faint hum of a cheap air purifier did little to mask the scent of stale cigars. Detective Alex Carver sat in his creaky chair, scrolling through a bland stack of dead-end cases, wondering if rent would swallow him whole this month. The bell above the door jingled, and Alex looked up, expecting another client who wanted their spouse followed for the third time. What he saw instead made him sit up straighter. She was tall, easily over 6.5 feet, with smooth, dark green scales that shimmered faintly under the office's flickering light. Her eyes, slit-pupilled and a striking gold, scanned the room with an intensity that made Alex uncomfortable. She wore a fitted cloak, clearly tailored for her species, its design accentuating her long limbs and the faint ridge of spines along her back. "Detective Carver?" she asked, her voice a low, melodic hiss, tinged with a faint accent that Alex couldn't place. She stood in the doorway, her clawed hands gripping the edges of her cloak as though she were shielding herself from the chaotic world she'd just stepped into. "That's me," Alex replied, waving a hand toward the empty chair across from his desk. "Come in. You look like you've got something on your mind." She hesitated before stepping in, her movements fluid and deliberate, as though she were testing the air with each step. She lowered herself into the chair, which creaked ominously under her weight. "I am Zirashka of the Nivrakian caste," she said, her sharp gaze locking onto his. "I require your assistance, detective. I was told humans possess qualities my kind does not: persistence, ingenuity, tenacity." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Flattering. What's the job?" Zirashka glanced toward the closed blinds on the office window, her posture stiff. "It is a matter of utmost delicacy. I believe my breedmate is unfaithful." Alex leaned back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. "So, cheating? That's the gist?" Zirashka's spines bristled slightly, her jaw tightening. "The term is crude. Among my kind, breedmates are chosen with great care. Betrayal of such a bond is unthinkable. If proven, it would grant me the right to dissolve our union, a rare privilege in Nivrak law. And you can't just ask him?" Her nostrils flared and her tail, he hadn't noticed it until now, flicked beneath her cloak. "He denies my suspicions, but I have observed changes. His scent lingers with unfamiliar pheromones. His cycles do not align with his usual routine. These are signs of dishonor." "Pheromones, huh?" Alex muttered. "Guess that's not something I can pick up on." She tilted her head, studying him. "No, but I trust your kind's methods, your determination to uncover truth, your tenacity. Appreciate the vote of confidence." He leaned forward, grabbing a notepad. "All right, Zirashka, I'll take the case, but I'll need details. Places he goes, people he sees, and I'm not cheap." Zirashka retrieved a small, cube-shaped device from her cloak and placed it on the desk. It glowed faintly blue. "This contains records of his movements over the last 6 cycles. I will pay whatever you require." "Fancy tech," Alex remarked, pocketing the cube. "All right, we'll start with surveillance and see where it leads. I'll keep you updated." Zirashka rose, towering over him. "Thank you, detective. I hope your reputation is well deserved." The cube Zirashka had handed over was no ordinary tracking device. Once Alex plugged it into his terminal, it unfolded a holographic map of the city with a precision he'd never seen. Tiny glowing icons indicated the breedmate's movements over the past 6 cycles. Alex whistled low. "Guess her tech's got my tenacity beat." The breedmate, Vorkar, had a predictable routine, until recently. The last few days showed erratic movement, late-night visits to the industrial district, and an unusual number of stops at an upscale alien club called the Scaled Sun. "Classy name," Alex muttered, pulling on his coat. "Time to take a look." The Scaled Sun was a swanky establishment on the edge of the city's alien quarter. Neon lights bathed the exterior in shifting hues of green and gold, mimicking the scales of its reptilian patrons. A large bouncer with scaled arms thicker than Alex's torso stood by the entrance. "You lost, human?" the bouncer rumbled, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. "Looking for a friend," Alex replied, slipping a bribe into the bouncer's clawed hand. "Human tenacity, remember?" The bouncer grunted but stepped aside. Inside, the air was heavy with alien pheromones and unfamiliar music that throbbed like a heartbeat. Patrons lounged in booths, their conversations a mix of hisses, growls, and guttural clicks. Alex scanned the crowd, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Vorkar in a corner booth. The reptilian was leaning close to a sleek, smaller alien, a member of a rival species judging by her bright blue skin and frilled head crest. "Bingo," Alex muttered, slipping his communicator out for a discreet photo. As Alex moved closer, the pair's conversation grew heated. Vorkar's tail lashed behind him, a clear sign of agitation. The blue-skinned alien hissed something and stormed off, her crest quivering with fury. Vorkar noticed Alex as he approached, his golden eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "Just a concerned party," Alex replied, sliding into the booth across from him. "You've been busy, Vorkar. Late nights, questionable company. Not exactly breedmate behavior." Vorkar's claws flexed, scraping the table's surface. "You have no right to interfere in Nivrak matters." "Your breedmate thinks otherwise," Alex said coolly. "She hired me to find out what you've been up to. So far, it doesn't look good for you." Vorkar's lip curled back, revealing sharp teeth. "You humans think you're clever, but you don't understand our ways." "Maybe not," Alex said, leaning in, "but I know dishonor when I see it. And your ways don't seem to involve keeping your word." Vorkar's tail lashed dangerously, but before he could respond, a commotion broke out near the bar. A group of shady-looking aliens had cornered a smaller patron, their body language unmistakably aggressive. "Stay out of this," Vorkar hissed, standing abruptly. "You've meddled enough." But Alex was already moving. Alex approached the group, his hand hovering near the concealed stun baton on his belt. "Hey, why don't you let the guy go and call it a night?" One of the aggressors turned, a hulking insectoid with razor-sharp mandibles. "This doesn't concern you, human." "Maybe not," Alex said, his voice steady. "But I've got a knack for sticking my nose where it doesn't belong." The insectoid hissed, lunging forward, but Alex sidestepped smoothly, jamming the stun baton into its side. The crackling charge sent it sprawling. The other two aliens hesitated, clearly reconsidering their options. "You can walk away," Alex said. "Or you can find out how stubborn humans really are." With a few muttered threats, the group backed off, dragging their stunned companion with them. The smaller patron gave Alex a grateful nod before disappearing into the crowd. When Alex turned back to the booth, Vorkar was gone. Back at the office, Alex recounted the events to Zirashka, who sat stiffly in the chair across from him. Her spines bristled as he described Vorkar's behavior. "So, it seems your suspicions were spot on," Alex concluded. "He's sneaking around with someone else and getting into shady deals, but he's not stupid. He knows I'm onto him." Zirashka's claws flexed against the armrest. "This dishonor, it is worse than I imagined." Alex leaned forward. "I'll dig deeper, but if you want my advice, don't wait too long. He's going to start covering his tracks." For the first time, Zirashka's gaze softened. "Thank you, detective. Your tenacity is appreciated." Alex smirked. "It's what I do. Besides, I've got a feeling this case is just heating up." The next morning, Alex sat in his office reviewing the photos he'd snapped of Vorkar. The alien's meeting with the blue-skinned woman looked suspicious enough, but there was something else, something off about the way they'd argued. He zoomed in on the image, noticing a faint marking on the woman's crest. "Great," Alex muttered, leaning back in his chair. "A Krell Syndicate tattoo, just what I need." The Krell Syndicate was notorious for smuggling, blackmail, and the occasional murder for hire. If Vorkar was mixed up with them, this case wasn't just about infidelity anymore, it was a ticking time bomb. As Alex prepared to leave for more surveillance, a sharp knock rattled his office door. Before he could answer, it swung open and two imposing figures entered, a towering insectoid and a squat, heavily armored reptilian. Both looked like they belonged to the Krell Syndicate. "Detective Carver," the insectoid buzzed, its mandibles clicking with menace. "We hear you've been meddling." Alex stayed seated, his hand hovering near the stun baton hidden under his desk. "I don't meddle, I investigate. Big difference." The reptilian snorted, crossing its thick arms. "Whatever you call it, back off, Vorkar. This is your only warning." "Vorkar's a client," Alex lied smoothly. "I'm helping him out. You wouldn't want me to drop the case and leave him high and dry, would you?" The insectoid hissed, stepping closer. "Do not test us, human. You think your tenacity will save you?" Alex met its gaze, unflinching. "No, but this might." In one swift motion, he pulled out the stun baton and jabbed it into the reptilian's side. The alien roared as the electrical charge crackled through its body, collapsing onto Alex's desk. The insectoid lunged, but Alex was ready, flipping his desk over to knock it off balance. Before it could recover, he grabbed his communicator and triggered the emergency distress signal. The piercing alarm sent the insectoid scrambling, dragging its stunned companion out the door. As silence fell, Alex leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Well, that escalated quickly. When Zirashka arrived later that evening, Alex greeted her with a grim expression. "Your breedmate's got bigger problems than cheating." Zirashka's tail twitched in agitation. "Explain." Alex gestured to the overturned desk and scorch marks on the floor. "The Krell Syndicate just paid me a visit. They're not happy I'm digging into Vorkar's business." Her spines flared, a ripple of frustration running down her back. "This dishonor spreads further than I feared. The Krell Syndicate is forbidden from dealing with my kind." "Well, someone forgot to tell them that," Alex said, rubbing the back of his neck. "If Vorkar's tangled up with them, it's not just your reputation at stake. They're dangerous, Zirashka. You might be too, just by association." She was silent for a moment, her gaze distant. Then, with a surprising softness, she said, "You could abandon this case. Save yourself from their wrath." Alex snorted. "Not my style. Besides, you hired me for my tenacity, remember?" Her golden eyes met his, a flicker of gratitude in their depths. "You are peculiar, detective." He smirked. "You have no idea." Alex decided to tail Vorkar more aggressively, tracking him to the docks on the edge of the city. Hidden behind a stack of crates, he watched as Vorkar handed over a mysterious briefcase to a shadowy figure. Alex snapped a few photos, careful not to be seen, but something about the exchange didn't sit right. As he moved closer, a low growl made him freeze. He turned slowly to see a Krell Syndicate enforcer, a massive quadrupedal beast with glowing red eyes, snarling at him. "Aw, hell," Alex muttered, reaching for his baton. Before he could act, the creature lunged. Alex barely managed to dodge, the beast's claws grazing his shoulder. He stumbled, landing hard on the ground as the creature circled him, its jaws dripping with venom. Reaching into his coat, he pulled out a small flash grenade, yanking the pin with his teeth. "Let's see how tough you are without your eyesight," he growled, tossing the grenade. The blinding flash sent the creature howling, giving Alex just enough time to scramble to safety. But as he ducked into an alley, he realized something chilling. Vorkar had seen him, and he was smiling. Alex leaned back in his chair, nursing a bandaged shoulder and studying the photos he'd snapped at the docks. Vorkar's exchange hadn't been about infidelity. It was something bigger. The briefcase he handed over bore a Nivrakian crest, a symbol of government use. Whatever was inside wasn't just illicit, it was political. "This guy's not just a cheater," Alex muttered. "He's a liability." He glanced at Zirashka, who was seated across from him, her posture rigid with tension. Her spines flared slightly when she caught his eye. "You think he is conspiring against our caste?" "Could be," Alex said, tapping the image of the crest on his screen. "But why risk dealing with the Krell Syndicate? He's got too much to lose, status, power. This isn't just about money." Zirashka's golden eyes narrowed. There are rumors among my kind, whispers of a faction seeking to overthrow the caste hierarchy. If he's involved, it could mean treason. Treason's a big word, Alex said, but it'd explain why the Krell syndicate's so eager to keep me off his tail. Determined to get answers, Alex decided to infiltrate the docks that night. Zirashka insisted on coming along despite Alex's protests. You hired me to take the risks, remember? He said. You will need my knowledge of my kind's customs, she replied, her voice firm, and my strength should things escalate. He sighed, grabbing an extra communicator for her. Fine, but if things go south, you stick behind me, got it? Her spines bristled. I am not fragile, Detective. I'm starting to see that, Alex muttered, leading the way. The docks were eerily quiet, the air heavy with the scent of salt and metal. Alex and Zirashka slipped into a shadowy warehouse following faint voices and the glow of alien tech. Vorkar stood near a cargo container arguing with a syndicate representative. The tension in the air was palpable as Alex and Zirashka crept closer, staying hidden behind a stack of crates. This shipment is crucial, Vorkar hissed. If it doesn't arrive on time, the entire operation is jeopardized. And if your caste finds out? The syndicate representative retorted, folding its blue insectoid arms. I doubt they'll be as forgiving as we are. They won't find out, Vorkar snapped, unless your people botch the delivery. As the conversation grew more heated, Zirashka leaned toward Alex, her voice a barely audible whisper. He is planning something catastrophic. That container, it bears the insignia of Nivrakian weapons research. Alex felt his stomach knot. Weapons? What kind of weapons? Experimental, she said grimly. One's banned by intergalactic law. Alex pulled out his communicator and began recording the exchange, but his grip tightened when Vorkar turned abruptly. I know you're there, Detective. Alex froze, his mind racing. How had he been spotted? Vorkar's gaze locked onto their hiding spot, his expression a mix of amusement and menace. You think you're clever, human, but you've underestimated my reach. Before Alex could respond, syndicate enforcers emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. Out, now! Run, Alex whispered to Zirashka. I will not leave you, she hissed. We don't have time to argue, Alex said, pulling a small smoke grenade from his belt. Trust me. He lobbed the grenade, filling the warehouse with thick, choking smoke. Grabbing Zirashka's arm, he led her through the chaos, dodging energy bolts as syndicate enforcers opened fire. They burst out of the warehouse and sprinted into the night, ducking into an abandoned alley. Alex leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Well, that went great. Zirashka glared at him. You are reckless. Resourceful, Alex corrected, smirking despite the danger. We got what we needed. Back at the office, Alex reviewed the recording. Vorkar's words painted a damning picture. He was working with the syndicate to smuggle illegal weapons off-planet, potentially to supply a rebellion. Zirashka stood beside him, her spines trembling with suppressed rage. He has brought shame upon our caste, upon me. Alex placed a hand on her shoulder, hesitating briefly at the feel of her cool, smooth scales. This isn't on you, Zirashka. He made his own choices. She turned to him, her gaze softer now. You risk much for this case, Detective. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because you asked for my help. Their eyes locked for a moment, a subtle shift in the air between them. But before either could speak, Alex's communicator buzzed with a new message. It was a warning. Drop the case or you're next. The warning message on Alex's communicator blinked ominously, its implications clear. They're not playing around, he muttered, setting it down. We're officially in the crosshairs. Zirashka stood by the window, her spines tense as she scanned the dark streets outside. You should abandon this case, she said, her voice low but firm. Your life is not worth my dishonor. Funny thing about humans, Alex said, leaning back in his chair. We're stubborn. You don't get to walk into my office, hand me a mess like this, and then tell me to quit halfway through." Her tail flicked sharply, betraying her frustration. "I do not understand your resolve. You risk much for someone you barely know." Alex smirked. "Let's just say I've got a soft spot for lost causes." She turned to him, her gaze piercing. "I am not a lost cause, detective." "No," Alex admitted. "But you're in over your head, same as me. So if we're doing this, we do it together. Agreed?" After a moment's hesitation, Zirashka nodded. "Agreed." Alex's instincts told him to follow the trail of money. If Vorkar was moving weapons with the syndicate, there'd be payments, bribes, or supply purchases he couldn't hide. With Zirashka's help, they began digging through encrypted financial records. Her species' advanced tech proved invaluable. Using a small, sleek device that attached to Alex's terminal, Zirashka bypassed layers of security with ease. Alex watched, impressed. "That's terrifyingly efficient." "Our kind values precision," she said without looking up. "But it is your creativity that finds the gaps we do not see." "Complimenting humans now?" Alex teased. "Careful, Zirashka. I might start thinking you like me." Her spines twitched slightly, the Nivrakian equivalent of a blush. "Do not mistake pragmatism for affection, detective." Alex chuckled. "Sure thing." Their search paid off. A series of payments from Vorkar's accounts led to a shadow company tied to the syndicate. The name Zethar Dynamics kept appearing, linked to off-world shipments leaving the docks. "That's our next lead," Alex said, jotting down the details. "But it won't be easy. Syndicate operations are heavily guarded." "I will accompany you," Zirashka said firmly. Alex hesitated. "You sure? This isn't your fight anymore." "It is my fight," she said, her golden eyes blazing. "Vorkar's actions stain my honor. I will see this through." Later that night, Alex and Zirashka arrived at the sprawling Zethar Dynamics facility. The air was thick with tension as they scoped out the perimeter. Security drones patrolled in precise intervals, their mechanical hum blending with the distant sound of waves from the nearby docks. Alex pulled a small hollow projector from his coat, mapping out the facility. "We'll go in through the maintenance hatch here," he whispered. "Quiet and quick." Zirashka nodded, her movements as fluid as a predator's as she followed him. "You are surprisingly adept at subterfuge for someone so loud." "Hey, I'm a professional," Alex replied, smirking. The pair slipped inside, navigating the dimly lit corridors with careful precision. Zirashka's heightened senses proved invaluable, detecting guards before they rounded corners. When they reached the main storage area, Alex let out a low whistle. Crates bearing the Nivrakian crest were stacked high, each one marked with warnings in multiple languages. "That's a lot of firepower," Alex muttered. Zirashka approached one of the crates, her claws tracing the crest. "These are not just weapons. They are prototypes, unstable, untested. If they were to be used, they could take out a city block," Alex finished grimly. Before they could document the evidence, a loud voice echoed through the room. "And here I thought you'd given up, detective." Vorkar stepped out of the shadows, flanked by syndicate enforcers. His smug expression sent Alex's blood boiling. "You're persistent. I'll give you that." "Comes with the job," Alex said, slowly raising his hands. "But you're in deep, Vorkar. Weapons like these? The syndicate won't protect you when this blows up." Vorkar sneered. "I don't need their protection. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, I'll be untouchable." Zirashka stepped forward, her spines flaring. "You have disgraced our caste, Vorkar. You will face judgment." He laughed, a cold, grating sound. "Judgment? From you? You're as powerless as this pathetic human." "Powerless?" Alex said, smirking. "That's cute." Before Vorkar could react, Alex triggered a hidden EMP device in his pocket, frying the enforcer's weapons and the nearby drones. The room erupted into chaos as Zirashka lunged, her claws flashing as she incapacitated two enforcers with swift, precise strikes. Alex tackled another, landing a solid punch before grabbing a discarded weapon. "You're out of tricks, Vorkar!" he shouted. Vorkar hissed, retreating toward a side exit. "This isn't over, Detective." As the authorities arrived to secure the facility, Alex and Zirashka stood outside, catching their breath. The night air was cool, carrying the faint tang of salt and metal. "You were impressive," Zirashka said after a moment. "For a human." "I'll take that as a compliment," Alex replied, grinning. "You weren't so bad yourself. Remind me never to get on your bad side." Zirashka tilted her head, her gaze lingering on him. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known, Alex Carver. Your determination, your ingenuity, it is admirable." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Careful, Zirashka. Someone might think you actually like me." Her spines twitched again, but this time she didn't deny it. The next morning, Alex and Zirashka sat in his office, reviewing the fallout from the warehouse raid. News of the weapons seizure was already spreading, but Vorkar's escape left them both uneasy. "Vorkar's not stupid," Alex said, scrolling through reports on his terminal. "He'll lay low for a while, regroup, but he won't stop, not with this much at stake." Zirashka stood by the window, watching the city below. "He has disgraced himself beyond redemption, yet he will cling to his schemes, dragging others down with him." "That's why we have to stop him," Alex said, looking up at her. "He's dangerous, not just to your people, but to everyone." She turned to him, her golden eyes softening. "You risk so much for a matter that does not concern you. I still do not understand why." Alex leaned back, folding his arms. "Call it a human thing. We don't like bullies, especially ones who think they're untouchable." A faint smile played on her lips, the Nivrakian equivalent of a laugh. "You are peculiar, Alex Carver." "You keep saying that," he teased. "Starting to think it's your way of flirting." Her spines twitched and she looked away quickly. "Do not be absurd." Later that evening, Alex worked late at his desk, combing through data Zirashka had extracted from the syndicate's encrypted files. She sat nearby, unusually quiet, her gaze fixed on the glowing map projected between them. "Something on your mind?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. Zirashka hesitated before speaking. "Among my kind, bonds are forged through shared trials. Those who fight beside one another, their connection is sacred." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Is that your way of saying we're bonded now?" "It is possible," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have never worked alongside one who is not Nivrakian. It is unsettling." "Unsettling good or unsettling bad?" Alex asked, leaning forward. She met his gaze, her golden eyes shimmering in the dim light. "Unsettling, intriguing." Alex chuckled softly. "Well, I'll take intriguing over bad any day." For a moment, the room felt smaller, the air between them charged with something unspoken. But before either could say more, Alex's communicator buzzed, shattering the moment. The screen displayed a shaky, poorly lit video feed. A familiar figure appeared. Lisha, the blue-skinned alien Vorkar had argued with at the club. Her voice was panicked, her crest quivering with fear. "Detective Carver," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't have much time. Vorkar knows I helped you. He's—" The feed cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Alex swore under his breath. "Looks like Vorkar's tying up loose ends." Zirashka stepped closer, her expression grim. "If she knows his plans, she is in grave danger." "Yeah, and she's our only shot at catching him," Alex said, grabbing his coat. "We need to find her before he does." Using the video's metadata, Alex traced Lisha's location to a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The place reeked of desperation, its neon sign flickering weakly in the night. They found her in a dingy room, trembling and clutching a data pad. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "They're watching." "Good," Alex said. Let them watch. Now what do you know about Vorkar's plans? Lisha hesitated, her gaze flicking to Zirashka. You're Nivrakian. Why would you help a human? Because he has proven himself, Zirashka said simply. Something Vorkar has not. Lisha seemed to weigh her words carefully before handing Alex the datapad. This contains everything, shipments, contacts, coordinates, but you have to stop him. He's planning to leave the planet with the next shipment. Before Alex could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. They're here, Lisha whispered, her crest flattening in fear. The door burst open and syndicate enforcers stormed in, weapons raised. Alex moved instinctively, shoving Lisha behind the bed and pulling his stun baton. Zirashka leapt into action, her claws flashing as she took down 2 enforcers in a flurry of precise strikes. Alex ducked behind a chair, firing his borrowed energy pistol to keep the others at bay. "Back window!" Alex shouted, motioning for Lisha to move. Zirashka covered their escape, her movements a blend of grace and ferocity as she held off the remaining enforcers. Only when the room was clear did she follow, her breathing heavy but her stance unwavering. "You okay?" Alex asked as they regrouped in a nearby alley. She nodded, wiping a streak of blood from her claw. "I am unharmed. You?" "Nothing I can't handle," Alex said, smirking. "Remind me never to mess with you." Her spines twitched in what Alex was starting to recognize as amusement. "Wise of you." Later, back at Alex's office, the three pored over the data Lisha had provided. It was damning. Vorkar's entire operation laid bare. But as Alex and Zirashka reviewed the details, the tension between them became impossible to ignore. "You were incredible out there," Alex said softly, glancing at her. "I mean it. I've never seen anyone fight like that." Zirashka tilted her head, studying him. "You continue to surprise me, Alex Carver. Your ingenuity, your resilience, it is unlike anything I have known." "Guess I've got a knack for leaving impressions," he said, his grin faltering slightly as her gaze lingered. For a moment the room fell silent, the weight of the day giving way to something more intimate. Zirashka's spines lowered, a sign of trust, and Alex found himself leaning closer. But before either could act, Lisha cleared her throat awkwardly. Are we going to stop Vorkar or—" Alex pulled back, a sheepish grin on his face. "Right, stopping Vorkar. Let's get to it." After Lisha had dozed off on Alex's couch, the office felt unusually quiet. Zirashka stood by the window, her silhouette framed by the city's neon glow. Alex leaned against his desk, watching her with a curious expression. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "for someone who doesn't trust humans, you've stuck around a lot longer than I expected." She turned, her golden eyes reflecting the faint light. "Trust is not given lightly among my kind. It must be earned." "And?" he prompted, crossing his arms. "Have I earned it?" Her spines twitched in what he was beginning to recognize as a mix of amusement and hesitation. "You are unconventional, reckless, but also resourceful, determined. You do not abandon your allies even when logic would suggest otherwise." Alex smirked. "I'll take that as a yes." Zirashka tilted her head, studying him. "You are unlike any being I have known, Alex Carver. Your kind's ability to adapt, to persist despite overwhelming odds, it is both admirable and infuriating." "Infuriating?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "I feel like that's the alien version of calling me charming." Zirashka's golden eyes glinted, and for the first time Alex caught a flicker of genuine amusement in her expression. "Perhaps. It is not so much your charm, but your persistence, the way you continue to push even when it would be wiser to retreat." Alex chuckled, leaning back against the desk. "Guess I'm just built that way. You know, there's a lot of humans like me. We don't give up easily." "Perhaps it is that persistence that is your greatest strength," she mused, stepping away from the window and walking slowly toward him. "And your greatest flaw." "Hey, I've survived this long, haven't I?" Alex shot back, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Maybe there's something to this human stubbornness. She paused, considering him for a moment. I would not call it stubbornness, more a refusal to accept defeat. There is strength in that. Alex straightened, his smile softening into something more genuine. I guess you're starting to see why humans are so adaptable. We can take a lot, keep going, and somehow find a way through, even when the odds are stacked against us. Zirashka's eyes softened slightly as she stepped closer, her posture still regal, but her demeanor more relaxed. You are unlike any being I have known, she repeated, her voice quieter this time. I have spent my life among my own kind, yet you make me question what I thought I knew. Alex's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment the world outside the office seemed to fade away. The tension between them had shifted, less about the case, less about the job, and more about something unspoken, something that had been building for a while. So, what are you saying? He asked softly, his voice lower now, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. Zirashka didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood in front of him, her golden eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. I do not know what this is, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This connection, between us, it is new, and it is unsettling. Alex's grin returned, though it was tinged with a touch of vulnerability. Unsettling good or unsettling bad? Her spines lowered, a subtle sign of comfort, or perhaps a willingness to let her guard down. I do not know, she said again, but it is something I am willing to explore, if you are. There it was, an invitation, a moment of shared uncertainty but also mutual understanding. Alex took a step closer, his breath slow but steady. I'm always up for something new. But this is new for me too. Zirashka's gaze never wavered, her eyes flickering with something deeper than before. Then let us take this one step at a time, Alex Carver, together. As the room seemed to close in on them, a faint noise from the couch interrupted the tension. Leisha stirred, groggily waking up from her nap. Her eyes blinked as she saw them standing close, a subtle change in their body language that didn't escape her notice. Sorry to interrupt, Leisha said, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. But I'm starting to think I came at the wrong time. Alex and Zirashka both straightened, a little too quickly, their sudden movement making the atmosphere feel even more awkward. No, Alex said quickly, laughing nervously. You're fine, Leisha, we were discussing the case, right? He shot a glance at Zirashka, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. Zirashka cleared her throat, her spines briefly flickering in a mixture of amusement and embarrassment. Indeed, there is much to be done. Leisha eyed them both for a moment, a knowing look crossing her face before she stood. Right. Well, if you two are done with whatever it was, we need to focus on stopping Vorkar. He's going to slip through our fingers if we keep getting distracted. Alex and Zirashka exchanged a glance, both trying to hide the faint flush they felt from the moment. Right, Alex said, rubbing the back of his neck. Vorkar, let's get back to that. As the case loomed larger, so did the unspoken connection between Alex and Zirashka. They worked late into the night, strategizing, tracking down Vorkar's hidden movements, and piecing together the final clues. But every now and then, when their hands brushed or their eyes met across the desk, that spark remained, something undeniable. A few hours later, with their heads buried in data, Zirashka broke the silence once again. So, detective, when this is over, do you intend to keep exploring this human tenacity of yours? Alex chuckled, looking up from the terminal. You mean when we finally catch the bad guy and save the day? She nodded. Yes, when the mission is complete. Well, Alex said, giving her a playful grin, maybe we can try figuring that out. But no promises. I've got a lot of bad habits. Zirashka's golden eyes softened as she tilted her head. You would not be the first. But it is those habits that make you unique. Guess we'll see if you're still saying that when I'm not around to help you save the day, Alex teased. She met his eyes again, her expression serious, but there was something warmer in her gaze. We will see, Alex Carver. We will see. The morning sun barely peeked through the blinds as Alex and Zirashka sat across from each other, the war room of his office alive with data and plans. Leisha had gone off to gather more intel from her contacts, leaving them to finalize their strategy for the final push against Vorkar and the syndicate. Alex leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. I swear, this guy's got more secrets than a locked vault. Zirashka scanned the data, her claws lightly tapping against the desk as she processed the information. He has covered his tracks well. However, we now have the location of his next move. Alex straightened, leaning forward. You're sure? I am, she said, looking at him with quiet certainty. The ship he plans to escape on will depart from the industrial docks tonight. If we act quickly, we can stop him. Alex grinned, a touch of mischief in his eyes. So we're really doing this. I mean, here we are, me, a human PI, and you, a badass Nivrakian warrior, about to go toe-to-toe with a guy who's got an entire syndicate at his back. Think we can pull it off? Zirashka's eyes glinted. I have no doubt. Alex paused, studying her expression, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. I like that confidence. You make me want to believe it too. Her spines shifted in what Alex recognized as a rare moment of softness, and she gave a slight nod. Then let us see this through to the end. Later that evening, the docks were shrouded in fog, the air thick with the smell of salt water and oil. The area was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the whole place were holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Zirashka and Alex moved through the shadows, blending in with the towering crates and rusted containers. They didn't speak much. Their movements were synchronized, each anticipating the other's next move. As they approached the loading area where Vorkar's ship was docked, Alex's hand went to his gun. This is it, he muttered. Time to end this. Zirashka's gaze never wavered as she surveyed the area. Be prepared, detective. The syndicate will not go down easily. A faint noise caught Alex's attention, a group of syndicate enforcers approaching the ship, their weapons at the ready. Looks like we're not the only ones with plans tonight. He glanced at Zirashka, her claws twitching with readiness. We do this fast, no more games. Keep them distracted while I get to Vorkar. Understood. Alex and Zirashka sprang into action, their attacks swift and precise. Zirashka took out 2 enforcers before they even had a chance to react, her claws flashing in the dim light. Alex used the distraction to slip behind cover, picking off the remaining syndicate members with calculated shots. Need a hand? Alex called out as he ducked behind a stack of crates. I am fine, Zirashka replied, her voice calm despite the chaos. Go for Vorkar. Alex nodded and sprinted toward the ship's entrance, his pulse racing. He could see the shadow of Vorkar through the cracked door, his smug expression visible even from a distance. He burst into the ship's cargo hold just as Vorkar was preparing to board the ship. Going somewhere, Vorkar? Alex said, raising his gun. Vorkar's eyes flicked to Alex with a mix of annoyance and amusement. You're persistent, detective, I'll give you that. I prefer resourceful, Alex retorted, advancing. But I'm sure you've heard that one before. Vorkar's eyes narrowed. This is the end of the line for you. You can't stop me. You're too... Before he could finish, Zirashka appeared in the doorway, her presence like a shadow, larger than life. You underestimated both of us, Vorkar. Vorkar's gaze flickered to her, a look of disbelief flashing across his face. You betrayed your own kind for this? I have no loyalty to someone like you, she said, her voice low but filled with an icy resolve. You have brought dishonor to us all. The tension crackled in the air as Vorkar lunged, drawing a concealed blade from his side. Alex barely had time to react, but Zirashka was faster. She blocked Vorkar's strike with one swift move, her claws clashing against his blade with a sharp hiss. "This ends now, Vorkar," Alex said, closing the distance. "You've crossed too many lines." Vorkar's eyes burned with hatred as he struggled against Zirashka's hold. "You think you've won? The Syndicate will never stop me." Zirashka's grip tightened. "I've had enough of your lies." With a swift motion, she disarmed Vorkar, sending his blade skittering across the floor. Alex stepped forward, aiming his weapon at Vorkar's chest. "You're done," Alex said coldly. "Surrender, or we'll make sure you never see the light of another planet." Vorkar sneered, his defiance faltering as he realized the battle was lost. "This isn't over." Alex glanced at Zirashka, and for a moment their eyes met. No words were needed. They had won, but the cost of victory was still ahead. Back at the office, the weight of their success settled in. Vorkar was in custody. The Syndicate's operations were dismantled, and the weapon smuggling ring had been taken down. Yet, despite their victory, there was still a quiet sense of uncertainty. Zirashka sat at the window, gazing out at the city. Her posture was more relaxed now, but her eyes still held that familiar intensity. Alex leaned against his desk, studying her. "You know," Alex said, breaking the silence, "I think I've gotten used to having you around." She turned to face him, her golden eyes softening slightly. "I suppose I have become accustomed to your persistence, Detective." "Well, if I'm going to be honest," Alex said with a grin, "I'm starting to think I'd miss it if you weren't here." Zirashka's spines twitched in what could only be described as a chuckle, and Alex's heart skipped a beat. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was just the weight of everything they'd been through together. But for the first time, it felt like they were standing on the edge of something more. "Perhaps you are not as insufferable as I thought," she said, her voice low but warm. "We make a good team, Detective." Alex's grin widened, and for once he didn't feel the need to respond with a joke. "Yeah," he said quietly, "we do." The following morning, Alex and Zirashka stood together in the briefing room, the weight of the past few days settling in. Vorkar was in custody, the Syndicate's criminal operations had been dismantled, and the city was safe again. Alex felt the exhaustion seep into his bones, but there was a sense of finality, of victory, in the air. Leisha had already left for her next mission, and the authorities were handling the rest of the cleanup. The docks were secure, and the illegal shipments were being seized by the authorities. For all intents and purposes, the case was closed. "So that's that," Alex said, glancing at Zirashka, who stood quietly beside him. "Vorkar's done, the Syndicate's been hit hard, and the galaxy's a little safer now." Zirashka nodded, her expression unreadable. "It is done. But the repercussions of this will echo across the stars. Vorkar's actions will not be forgotten, and his betrayal has shaken our caste." Alex exhaled slowly. "I get it, the fallout isn't over for you, but for now, we can take a breather, right?" She turned to him, her gaze sharp. "You humans always move on so quickly. You never stop to consider the weight of what's been lost." Alex met her eyes, sensing the deeper meaning behind her words. "I don't know if it's moving on. I think sometimes it's just about keeping going, you know?" There was a long pause. Zirashka's gaze softened ever so slightly. Perhaps you are right. But there is still much I do not understand about you, Alex Carver." That night, the two of them sat in Alex's office, the glow of the city outside casting a soft light on their faces. The work was done. Vorkar was locked up, and everything was as it should be. Yet, in the quiet moments between them, it felt like there was more left unsaid. Zirashka broke the silence, her voice almost hesitant. "Alex, there is something I must say." Alex looked up from his paperwork, his heart beating a little faster. "What's that?" Her golden eyes searched his face, her usual confidence slightly subdued. In the time we have spent together, I have come to value you in ways I do not fully understand." Alex swallowed, his throat dry. He had suspected it, but hearing her say it made his pulse quicken. "I feel the same way," he admitted. "I didn't expect any of this, didn't expect you, but now I can't imagine doing this without you." She stood, walking over to where he sat. For a moment there was nothing but the soft hum of the city outside, the distance between them shrinking. "I've always lived by my caste's rules, Alex," she said, her voice low. "I've never known something like this, something personal." "I get that," Alex said, standing up slowly, his heart racing. "I've never met anyone like you either. But this, whatever this is between us, I don't want to walk away from it." Zirashka reached out, her hand brushing against his chest, her touch electric, her claws sharp against his shirt. "Then don't. Stay." The words hung in the air between them, unspoken yet clear. Alex's mind raced, but his heart knew what it wanted. Without a word, he closed the space between them, his hand gently touching her cheek, his thumb brushing the scales of her face. Zirashka's golden eyes softened, her spines lowering in a sign of comfort. For the first time, Alex saw her not as a fierce warrior, but as someone vulnerable, someone who had let her guard down. "I don't know where this is going, but," Alex began, his voice barely a whisper, "I don't want to let it go." Zirashka's gaze never left his. "Neither do I." With a careful, deliberate movement, she leaned in, her lips just brushing against his. It wasn't the fiery kiss of a sudden passion. It was slow, tentative, and yet it spoke volumes. The touch of their lips was a promise that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together. When they pulled apart, Alex felt like his entire world had shifted. They were no longer just allies or strangers working toward a common goal. They were something more. Zirashka rested her forehead against his, her breath soft and steady. "You make me question everything I thought I knew about my kind. About myself." "I think that's the point," Alex said, his voice gentle but sure. "We don't have to know everything right now. We just have to be in this together." The days ahead would not be easy, and there would be challenges to face. Cultural differences, misunderstandings, and the ever-present threat of new enemies. But for the first time in a long time, Alex felt like he had someone at his side who understood him in a way no one else could. They didn't need to have all the answers. They didn't need to know what the future held. All that mattered was that they had each other, and that was enough for now. As they stood together by the window looking out at the city lights, Alex felt a quiet peace settle over him. He had found something more than just a case to solve. He had found something worth fighting for. And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was alone in the universe. The days after the case wrapped up were quiet, almost too quiet for Alex's liking. The city buzzed with the usual hustle and bustle, but he found himself in a new kind of routine. Zirashka stayed by his side, her presence now a comfort rather than an enigma. They worked together, but their time outside of the office was changing too. Conversations drifted from tactics and investigations to their pasts, their cultures, and the things that made them who they were. One evening, after a particularly grueling round of paperwork, Alex found himself sitting at a local bar, nursing a drink, when Zirashka slid into the seat next to him. Her sharp features were softened by the dim lighting, and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of calm when she was near. There was a quiet understanding between them now, no words necessary. She raised her drink, her golden eyes gleaming in the low light. "To us," she said simply. "To us," Alex echoed, clinking his glass gently against hers. They drank in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared victories and challenges settling between them. "You know," Alex began, his voice softer than usual, "I've never really been good at this whole emotional connection thing." Zirashka's eyes softened, and for once there was no trace of the stoic warrior. She tilted her head slightly, her spines lowering in a sign of curiosity. I do not think many humans are. Yeah, well, Alex chuckled, running a hand through his hair. I guess I'm learning. I thought this whole thing between us would be temporary. Just a case, a partnership. But now, I'm not so sure I want it to end. Zirashka's gaze softened, her voice gentle. It does not have to end, Alex. I too find myself uncertain. But I do not wish to walk away from this either. Alex felt a warmth spread through him as her words sank in. He had feared for so long that he was simply passing through people's lives, a fleeting figure in a world that didn't quite understand him. But with Zirashka, it felt different. Real. He wasn't just the investigator anymore. He was Alex, someone she had come to trust. Then let's not, Alex said, his smile widening. Let's take this one day at a time. We've got all the time in the world to figure it out. Zirashka's eyes softened even more, and for a moment there was no war, no betrayal, no syndicate. Just two people, two very different beings, finding their way toward each other in a universe full of uncertainty. She placed her hand on his, her claws gentle but firm. Then we will, together. In the weeks that followed, their relationship evolved into something unspoken but undeniable. They learned more about each other, about their worlds, their cultures, and the struggles that had shaped them. Alex found himself laughing more, his quick wit mixing with her dry humor. Zirashka, once rigid and reserved, began to open up in ways he hadn't expected, showing glimpses of vulnerability that made her all the more captivating. They spent evenings walking through the city, discussing everything from politics to the best kind of coffee. Alex had even started to enjoy her stories about Nivrakian history, despite his initial skepticism about their intricacies. And in turn, she seemed fascinated by the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human emotions and relationships. There were moments of awkwardness, like when Alex tried to cook her a human meal and she wasn't sure how to handle the spice of chili. But there were more moments of connection. Small smiles, lingering glances, and shared laughter filled the spaces between their work. One evening, as they walked along the edge of the city's skyline, Alex stopped, turning to face her with a seriousness that mirrored his feelings. You know, he said, his voice quieter than usual, I never thought I'd find this. Someone like you. Someone I could actually trust. In a way that goes beyond just the job. Zirashka's spines lowered once more and her expression softened as she placed a hand on his chest, her claws resting lightly over his heart. I thought the same, but I think that is what makes us strong, our differences. Alex smiled, his chest swelling with emotion he didn't quite know how to express. Guess we've got a lot more to learn, huh? Yes, Zirashka agreed, but I would rather learn with you. Alex chuckled, his hand reaching up to brush a stray lock of her hair behind her ear. Yeah, me too. They stood there side by side, staring out at the city lights, the weight of the future ahead of them not so daunting anymore. Together they would face whatever came next, one step at a time. And for the first time in a long time, Alex felt truly at peace.